So yeah, what other options do we have? Because we've seen the disasters that can arise when you run away.
Fight or flight, but fight is not.
Well, it depends. You know, if all of a sudden you're walking along and thump, something falls in front of you, a big, huge rock that's fallen in front of you. Some people's reaction is to say, "Yay, an obstacle."
A challenge.
Yes, un défi. I'm alive. Right? And they roll up their sleeves.
I don't know
and
these people. You'll have to meet them.
and they get out their mountain climbing equipment. And they'll either climb the rock or they get out their dynamite and they'll blow it up. Right? Nothing's gonna stop me. And there's others who'll just go, an obstacle, dong. An obstacle, dong. An obstacle, dong. Right? Or you can go, oh, an obstacle. I knew it. My life's like that. Another one. I'm just going to sit here and cry. Right? Or, an obstacle. Gee, maybe I'm supposed to go somewhere else. Right? And you walk around the obstacle. Oh, look here. A new path. Maggie always interjects at the right time, I notice. So, yeah, there's all of these different ways of dealing with obstacles. It's not just anger. Right? And this is what's interesting. The reaction that we have to an obstacle in our path will allow us to identify how much ego exactly is involved in ego.
Ego.
Right? Is involved. How much of our old identity and personal value is involved in having to go there, right?
Did you say old?
Old.
Yeah.
So this is the good straight path. This is the way I have to walk, all right? When an obstacle gets in my path, if that is not allowing me to stay on the good straight path, well then, that obstacle's got to go. Right? Otherwise, I am no longer good or straight. So, the level of determination that we have in maintaining this particular path that we've decided that we're going to take is really an indication of how strong the programming is that we have. Huh? So, I tend not to use the word ego very much. and to think more in terms of the programming of mothers and fathers and our ideas that we've inherited as to what is a good person, right? And what is a path that is appropriate. What we learn is a path that's appropriate and correct for ourselves as members of our families and our societies. Yes, Maggie May. Yes. So, when we've got plans, right? When we've got plans, and a lot of our own personal value is invested in those plans, we're going to get really upset if something happens, right? If we're really simply creating our paths as we go, from instinct and from following spirit and being in the present, then it's like, well, okay, maybe I'll do this instead. No big deal, right? And what's interesting is, okay, what role do the joints play in our lives? À quoi ça sert l'articulation?
La flexibilité.
Yeah. Yes, flexibility, right? And so people who aren't able to move very well because they've got calcification, they've got arthritis, right? This is an external manifestation, a body manifestation of inflexibility, right? Of rigidity. And the other thing is that you don't get symptoms unless the belief system is being challenged. Okay? So that if you have very rigid ideas and you're happily going along in your nice rigid way, and nobody bothers you, and you just, bulldoze your way through the Amazon or wherever, right? Destroying life in your path. As if there's nothing challenging you, there's no problem, right? You just merrily go on your way, being rigid, and other people pay for it, right? And actually, we see a lot of people who have no problem whatsoever being forceful and rigid and controlling and angry, right? And they live long lives, and all the people around them suffer. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do they live so
And
long?
die young. Yeah.
Est-ce que les hanches pourraient faire partie de cette...
Je me demande, est-ce que les hanches sont une articulation? Mais oui.
Mais oui.
Yeah. So, we only get symptoms in our bodies when there's something inside us that's challenging the programming, right? Or when we call to ourselves in our lives something that's going to make us question whether what we're doing is really the best thing. So when people get arthritic symptoms, they're one step closer to themselves than the people who are plowing through life, knocking everybody else out of their way, right? They're one step closer to their essence because there's a struggle. Well, there's a struggle. It's so beautiful the way this works. Our limbs, okay, les membres, peuvent être vus chronologiquement. Okay? Alors, les poignets et les chevilles sont reliés avec la naissance. Okay? The wrists and ankles are related to the time of birth. Our feet and the way our feet touch the earth is really our basic connection with incarnation, our basic connection with the earth and our bodies. And then the wrists and the ankles are all the perinatal time, the whole time around birth when we're being programmed, particularly with our mother's programs. Okay? Les gens qui se cassent les poignets, les chevilles, sont des gens qui et en répétition, essaient de casser avec leur maman et avec la programmation de leur mère dans leur vie. So when you're breaking your wrists or your ankle repetitively or hurting it, you're spraining them, you're trying to break with the programming and the modeling from your mother. Right? And then I'm going to do this on the arm, but it's the same thing on the leg. Okay? From the wrist to the elbow and from the ankle to the knee is childhood. Okay? This is from birth to puberty. Well, from birth to puberty. You gonna bark again?
From birth to puberty is
Is from the wrist to the elbow and from the ankle to the knee. Right? And when we're working on somebody's body, we can actually place times of trauma by areas of pain or other symptoms in the leg or in the arm. You can judge when the trauma happened by what you find in the leg. Points of pain, or whatever different symptoms you might have in part of your leg or in your forearm. And then comes puberty, right? L'âge de puberté. Et à l'âge de puberté, on se regarde et on se dit, oh, shoot. Rien à faire. Je suis une femme. Est-ce que ça veut dire qu'il faut que je devienne comme ma mère? Or, je suis un homme. Dois-je devenir comme mon père maintenant? So, we usually at puberty we can't escape what sex our body is. It's becoming obvious. And we have to decide at this point how we're going to be in our, obviously, sexual bodies. And it's at this point that we choose, as we were discussing before, we choose which parent we're going to manifest and which parent we really don't want to be like, right? When we have symptoms in our knees or elbows, it shows that we're having issues with the program that we received at that point about, for example, if it's in our knees, the path that we're supposed to take because we're men or women, right? So, because the knees are in the legs, it's related to the path, right? If symptoms are in the elbows, it's our ability to give and receive love. And so, or to relate to other people. So, issues in the elbows are about what we learned we have the right to or we have to do in our roles. In society, in our families, right? Which brings us to the fact that in the same way as metal element was 0 to 10, water element 10 to 20, now we're from the age 20 to the age 30. That we're really working on the third chakra and the wood element in our lives.
Wait, sorry, so age 30 on, we are working on...
20 to 30.
Okay.
0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30. Mm-hmm. 20 to 30, we're taking on roles. Typically, not anymore, okay? not anymore. But before, when we were following kind of more natural rhythms, it was in this time that we would become parents, that we would become masters of whatever professions, whatever careers, however we were going to involve ourselves in societies. This was the time when we would take on our social roles, right, between 20 and 30. Mind you, we used to be dead by 50. So, this is about our roles in society, right? And one of the essential roles is that of our gender. How am I going to be a man? How am I going to be a woman? So the roles and how they affect our relationships with other people and our paths in our lives are what we find in the knees and in the elbows. And then between the knee and the hip, and between the elbow and the shoulder, is the time of maturity. Maturing, not maturity. Maturity is in the hips and in the shoulders. This is the time, let's say, of adolescence. Okay? Where we tend to try on different hats, different ways of being, often in rebellion against what we learned. Yeah.
I'm sorry, which joints is that again?
Did I say that in French?
No.
Oh,
But
okay.
no, you didn't, but I'm just trying to, I really want to hear it.
All right. So, between the knees and the hips, right, is adolescence, let's call it, right? The hips are maturity, right?
So when you say
Yeah.
between knees and hips, you mean the whole
The whole thigh,
thigh.
the
Okay.
whole thigh, right?
Between knees and hips is adolescence.
And between the elbow and the shoulder also,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so this is when we're trying on different ways of being and rebelling against our parents very often, and creating our what we consider to be our ideals. Remember I talked about ideals and how our ideals are usually formed in opposition to what we learned, right? So this is when we decide how we're going to change the world, right? How we're going to do it differently. And then we set out and try to do it differently. Between 20 and 30. And that's when we hit the obstacles. You understand? Huh? So again, if you want to look at it this way, that from the feet to the ankle is 0 to 10. Right? Now, does that work?
Feet to ankle.
No. No, that's right. 0 to 10, yeah, 10 more or less, puberty, right? So, yeah, let's say from the feet to the knees is 0 to 10. And then from 10 to 20, right? And then in the hips and in the shoulders, we're dealing with taking responsibility, right? Responsibility. That is the most important word when we're talking about roles, right? You follow me? Quand on parle des rôles qu'on a dans la société, c'est vraiment la responsabilité
In the hips.
dont on parle.
In the shoulders.
Both.
In the hips and shoulders.
In the hips and shoulders. So, yeah, from in our teenage years, we're formulating how we're going to change the world in reaction against what we've learned. And then in the 20s, from the 20 to 30, we're trying that out and hitting all of the different obstacles that will indicate what our real programming was. And then we have our Saturn return, where we fall apart. And then at the end of the Saturn return, in around 30, then we can start recreating if we want, right? And that's the next stage. But in the thighs in particular, we're dealing with sexuality, right? And so when we're working on people's bodies, it's really easy to tell when there's sexual tension, when there's an accumulation of sexual energy. People often get really embarrassed when I've been working on them for a while, and they'll come and I'll say, "Oh, you found somebody you like, huh?" You can tell there's just more juice in the area, you know?
In the thighs only?
In the thighs, yeah.
In the hips, no?
No,
Not in the...
in the
Okay,
thighs.
okay.
And the hips are about procreation, right? It's about reproducing, creating another family, you know, that responsibility that you have in society, right? That you have to your clan, your tribe, your species, etc., etc. Right? And the shoulders also, we know it's about responsibility, right? The shoulders that we call the should-ers. All of the shoulds are in our shoulders. Toutes les choses que nous savons, que nous avons besoin de faire pour être aimé. Hein? Pour être certaine d'avoir une valeur comme une bonne personne, un bon membre de la société, prenant les responsabilités comme une grande. Right?
Okay, when you say shoulders, you mean like, or here? Like, 'cause when people say
the
massage,
joint, it's
yeah.
the joint, but it's also this whole area.
Like, is it
of-
like that?
Yeah, it's this whole horizontal stretch,
Yeah, okay.
front and back. Right? But when we're talking about the joint, we're talking about here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, many, many, many people have rigidity in the hips and in the shoulders, right? C'est tellement commun d'avoir des symptômes de hanches, des remplacements de hanches. C'est tellement commun maintenant. Yeah? People getting their, it's almost, you hear so many people say, I'm going in to get my hips redone.
Yeah.
Wow! Ça n'arrivait pas, tu sais. Dans notre temps. Il n'y en avait pas du tout. Et maintenant, tout le monde se fait refaire les hanches. Getting
So
my
wait,
hips
when-
redone. It's like getting my roots redone.
It is kind of funny when you think about it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, but so when people say they're going to get their hips done, what are they going to become less rigid after that?
Well, that's it. Exactly. You know.
So rigidity. Why is there this rigidity in the hips and shoulders? Because of the responsibility?
Okay. The hips are like a cradle, like a basin for all of the vital energy in our bellies. And most of what we've learned about responsibility related to our sexuality is about limiting, containing, denying, rejecting, burying. Shall I go on?
You're very creative.
Huh? So, we did not learn that we were supposed to let loose. in our hips in particular. Huh? When I was little, I used to walk very freely, and my mother stopped me. She said, "You're walking like a Bajan." A Bajan is a Barbadian, right? And les femmes antillaises, West Indian women, are known for, you know. And that's how I walked, you know. And that was not ladylike. Huh? Not ladylike. Now that word lady, right? Lady and gentleman, that indicates, that just tells you everything. Right? That's someone who is, c'est comme un cheval bien dompté, right? A very well-trained horse. Thoroughbred. Well-trained. To not go off the beaten path, right? This is the path. It's nice and straight, right? And as long as you keep on the path, there's no obstacles. Huh? So, yeah, it's no wonder that we're having to have our hips redone. Yeah.
So Don, and then, so what if, taking from what you were saying, like what if somebody starts doing yoga or something that would theoretically release?
This is right where I was going.
Relax,
That's right where I was going. Yes.
Okay.
So when, for example, we have belly dancing classes, some people just stand there and cry. It's so scary. It's so frightening. When we start to move in a certain way, all of those feelings of shame come up. Right? The shame about our sexuality, the shame about being a putain, right? A pute, huh? A whore. Right? It's incredible what happens when you start moving, when you start putting life back into that part of your body. The emotional reactions that come up are really, really strong.
But if somebody, for example, has a lot of shoots and all that stuff, and starts, doing stuff, getting massage.
Sorry, a lot of what?
Shoots.
Shoulds. Yes, right.
And starts doing yoga and massage to release all this. Would that change their internal?
Well, what that's going to do is going to bring up in the person questions. You'll be more likely to attract people and situations in your life that are going to confront your beliefs about what you should be doing, right? I mean, God knows what will happen if you frequent people who practice yoga. You know? Like, God forbid. You should hang around with that sort of person. You know, you get all kinds of loosey-goosey ideas about what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. You know? You understand what I mean? So, the putting more life into different places in our bodies creates the opportunity to deal with what has been keeping rigidity in those places in our bodies. So we're going to attract other things, other experiences. The shoulders. So many people have tendonitis or frozen shoulders or many people don't have free flexibility in their shoulders. N'est-ce pas? It's very, very common.
What I see most around me is for the knee. Many people are
Yeah,
with sports, and they keep going.
they keep hurting their knees.
They keep going doing the sports because they don't want to stop, but the knees are really hurt.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, yeah, lots of knee issues. And again, that's people taking their paths. Yeah. What am I supposed to be doing in my life? You know? And there's resistance against what they learned, but not a resolution. As long as it hurts, it means there's no resolution. It means there's still friction between what you learned and who you really are. That's why it hurts. When there's a resolution of the issue, when you've either gone back and submitted to everything that you learned about yourself, or released what you've learned about yourself and accepted another way of being, then there will be no more pain. But when you're in that time of friction, right, of one reality rubbing against the other one, that's when it hurts.
Do knees represent a parent?
Puberty.
But they don't represent...
Well, the right side of the body is more related to
Oh, yeah.
the father and the left side to the mother.
Right.
Right? And then it depends on what gender of body you happen to be in. Also, right?
Why does that matter?
Well,
So it's not just like dad, mom.
it generally is just dad, mom. But interpreting it in the body of the person that you might be working on or in yourself, the right knee is related to your path in society more, right? What you believe you're allowed to do or what you are supposed to do as a career, how you're supposed to be out in the world, right? This is very classically related to one's job and what we quote unquote should or shouldn't do as men and women. But it can also be what you learned. You can also look at it as what you learned from your father about what a woman is supposed to be doing. Right? Right? And then the opposite side is the left side of the body is the inner life and how your path is supposed to unfold in that respect, related to relationships, family, all that stuff. Your connection to the earth also. The left foot is the foot that is our anchor to the earth. And from that anchor we push out and step forward with the right. So if we're looking at the liver and the gallbladder as being the internal organs, which one is related to daddy and which one's related to mommy?
Liver is related to father. Gallbladder is related to mother.
Right. Yes.
Pas sûr d'avoir compris.
Oui, c'est ça. Parce que c'est une lacune dans le... Parce que tu n'étais pas ici pour la dernière. It's because, et c'est tellement simple encore, si on regarde un organe intérieur, ceux qui sont solides sont reliés avec l'énergie du père, et ceux qui sont des contenants ou creuses sont reliés avec l'énergie de maman. Hein? Alors, pour métal, il y a les poumons et le côlon. Alors, les poumons avec papa, le côlon avec maman. Les reins et la vessie, ça devient très clair. Hein? Les reins, c'est papa, c'est tout ce qui est dans le monde externe. La vessie, c'est le monde interne, maman. Et maintenant, nous avons le foie et la vessie biliaire. Hein? Alors, le foie, c'est l'énergie dans le monde, la société, papa, hein? Et la vessie biliaire, c'est tout l'aspect féminin relié avec la mère. So, liver problems are more related to career and society and one of the things that we're attracted to is alcohol, right? When we are feeling that there are obstacles in our path and we're frustrated or whatever, one of the ways of suppressing those feelings is to drink alcohol. That's interesting, huh? Mm-hmm. So, in the same way as meat and salt suppress fear, alcohol in particular, and fried food, les fritures, les frites. Poutine, yeah, that's good for everything. Salt, dairy, fries, yes, good all around. Yeah, right. No emotions allowed. Yeah, so fried food and booze are what help us not connect with our reactions to obstacles in our lives. And that just says a lot about so many things. Yes, and so that's the liver. And then the gallbladder, where we most often see gallbladder symptoms is in this area of the body. Hey, Davey.
Sorry.
It's okay. This is a major acupuncture point for the gallbladder. It's called Tai Yang. It's one of the major places where we treat the gallbladder in acupuncture or anything.
Did you say in the temples?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is where we get migraines. Right? Migraines are very often related to menstruation, to the menstrual cycle. So, now what would that mean? My body, my woman's body, is an obstacle. This is stopping me from being a man. This is stopping me from being efficient and calculating and non-emotional. So that's what migraines are about. Right?
That's funny.
And whether you're a man or a woman, it's related to feeling that your body is an obstacle. And the other place where people get gallbladder symptoms a lot is in this sweet spot in the middle of the bum. Right? That there's a little hollow right in the middle of your buttock that hurts like hell. Right? And when you're having symptoms there, when you feel it when you've been skating and you haven't been skating for a while. It's that same spot. This is anger related to sexuality. A lot of people, when you're working on their bodies, you can't go near that point because it's so painful. Anger
That's around, yeah.
related to sexuality. Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking like that's kind of around the coccyx, right? Like right here.
No.
No.
Stand up.
Let me put my book down.
There.
Oh, and is it just on that side?
No, both sides.
Back.
Turn around.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's relating to gallbladder, and that's relating to
Mhm.
sexuality and
Yeah.
suppressing sexuality.
Well, anger about sexuality.
Anger.
So, whatever form or seeing sexuality as an obstacle. For example, remember I was talking about mothers who wanted to be nuns?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they would probably have a lot of pain here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because their sexuality stopped them from living the lives that they thought they should lead. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Can you, like, when you say sexuality, like, can you give me a definition?
When I'm talking about sexuality here, I'm talking about that chemical desire for somebody else. Right? That, yeah, chemical desire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about love, I'm talking about sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
That, desire that arises within us to mate
Mm-hmm.
with another person of our species and our molding to create others just
Mhm.
the same.
Right.
about
No.
creating
Yes.
a space.
Yes. It's not about pleasure. As anyone who is totally impassioned and in the throes of desire will tell you, this is not necessarily about pleasure. Uh-huh. It's really the pleasurable sensations are probably nature's way of getting us involved in all of that stuff. Sneaky Mother Nature. But we also know that, the pleasure can be satisfied without needing to procreate, without even another partner. If we're talking about sexuality, not love.
What if you have your gallbladder removed?
Oh, that's it, that's all. Fixed.
I'm serious.
Well, the energy is still there.
But why? What happens when you have?
We don't, our bodies are the physical manifestations of our bodies, but there's also the energetic manifestation, right? So, just if you look at the meridian system, the lines of energy in the meridians, they're all connected one to the other, and they flow one to the other, right? Go out and in and out and in and up and down, right? And they're all connected in this huge, beautiful circuitry, okay? Or like a circuit board. And when you take out the physical gallbladder, you still got all of that energy coming from behind it and all the energy flowing in front of it that's going to keep going. It's going to have a little more difficulty because the gallbladder is not there, but it's still all going to keep running. Same as if you take out any part of your body. So that I know several people who have had their thyroids taken out who aren't taking medication because they're simply nourishing the etheric, the energetic organ that's still there, right?
So when we need our gallbladder removed, it's just relating to anger and suppression of sexuality in some way.
Not necessarily sexuality, but the feeling that being in this gender of body, or sometimes just being in a body, is an obstacle. So people who just want to get out of here, beam me up, Scotty, let the mothership come and take us away now, please, right? Who are totally focused on the angels and archangels and extraterrestrials and just want to get out of here because this place stinks. They're likely to have gallbladder issues. Right?
Yeah, it's just interesting because both my mother and my grandmother had to have the gallbladders removed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, what this shows you is what you learn to do with your anger, right? Or your feelings of frustration about this energy coming up and you can't manifest it, right? Being stuck in whatever situation because of the role that you've learned that you have to play. And just feeling that there's nothing you can do about it. So powerlessness is also very much involved in this, in this wood element, right? Le sentiment d'impuissance. Et rien faire. Hein? Rien faire? C'est comme ça?
Right, so like what you're saying about the creativity, and I forgot that you mentioned that before too, the creativity and wanting to allow the creativity to move through you, and but feeling an obstacle by the body somehow, or like you said, feeling stuck in a role or suppressing anger and keeping it all inside, right? Okay. So so that has a lot, right? So what you're saying has a lot to do with learning about what we do with our anger, what to do with our anger, learning how to.
Yeah. Yes, you opened another door I wanted to go through. So most of the laws of our society are about la gestion de la colère, right? So many of the rules and laws that we have are about dealing with anger and what do we do with anger, right? And how do we punish it? Huh? And so we've really learned to be frightened of anger, of our own and of other people's, right? We're terrified of anger, right? And we're so frightened of anger that when we feel anger arising in someone in front of us, our reaction is immediate, right? Some of us will run away, and some of us, it's fight or flight, right? And some of us will get angry right away. No? But we learn to be terrified of the anger of people around us. It's not allowed when there's so many people living so close together. If everyone was allowed to just let go of their anger, what would happen? Right? So we have video games. And hockey. And the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. With pizza
Yeah. And beer.
and beer.
So it is important to be able to do something with our bodies to release this energy of impotence. I won't say anger, I'll say impotence, right? And the accumulation of that sensation of not being able to be who you are in the world. And often I'll suggest people play squash or tennis or, do something where they can hit something. And I've heard other therapists suggest that you take, well, you can take a pillow or you can take, and beat the living daylights out of it, focusing all of your anger on that. Good idea. On the object of your anger. But the problem with that, like for example, if you are really angry at, we'll just take George Bush, as an example, although he was, he's turning out to have been a real kind of innocent compared to the people behind him. Anyway, so you take somebody that you really, really are angry at, and you take their photograph and you put it on a punching bag and you beat it, right? Now, what's the problem with that? You're getting out your anger, or your ex-boyfriend, right?
Ne te le réapproprie pas, isn't it?
Exactly.
Tu fais juste le projeter.
Exactly. What you're doing, if that, whoever you're angry at is an aspect of yourself. Wherever your anger is being placed, it's a part of yourself.
And probably a lot of people would say, I'm not like George Bush. You know? And when you say that, even I think to myself, well, I don't, I'd have to think
You're
about
not
that.
angry enough. You're not angry enough at George Bush, but the anger would be the impotence, related to the impotence, right? Related to fear and powerlessness. The fear that comes from powerlessness, right?
Yeah, so that will come up, for example, by cutting the people that cut the loggers that cut the trees in the Amazon,
Yeah,
for example, on
Like
the
that.
stories you hear and stuff
that's
like
right.
that. Yeah.
That's right. And all of those things that you hear, right? Or in our own lives, somebody who hurts us, who we feel has hurt us, right? And we want to project our anger on that person without understanding that that person was called into our lives to evoke memories that we can touch if we just sit with the emotions, right? So the whole idea of letting out your anger on anything else, if you're focusing your anger on what you think you're angry at, you're just reabsorbing it into yourself, right? Anything that we don't like belongs to us. Anything that we love belongs to us as well. And so the idea is to let the energy flow, but to see whatever it is, anger, what it's usually we're touching anger first. But if you allow yourself to, if you have a punching bag, for example, and you just allow yourself to start hitting the bag and feel the energy coming out, the layers of anger are going to peel away. And then you get to this feeling of impotence, and then you just crumble in tears because you hit the fear and everything underneath the anger, right? If you're focusing your anger on an object of your anger, the anger just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? But if you see it as energy that's releasing from your body, then you're peeling off the layers and you'll get to what's underneath the anger. And it's always fear. So it's important to see it as releasing energy from your body.
What if you don't allow yourself to get angry? What if you feel that you can't access your anger? Or you have struggle with that, allowing yourself to be angry?
Well, I suggest punching bags to really a lot of people. And very often, you put on gloves and you start hitting and you feel stupid. Like, ting, ting, oh boy. Ting, ting. Right?
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
So you feel really dumb at first, right? But then it's like pulling out a plug at some point. And this is why so often violence in gangs gets so out of hand, or violence on the part of police people can get so out of hand because they're scared, and it's been accumulating, and they just lose it.
I have a question. What about, is it possible for people to project anger onto other people?
What do you mean exactly?
Or is it possible, I don't know, I don't really know what my question is, so,
Well, you do know, but what exactly do you mean?
I
I mean, if
understand
I'm
that.
angry, I can make somebody else angry? Is that what you mean?
no, like if you feel somebody else's anger and you feel like they're angry and they're like having you feel like it's an angry moment.
Like that might trigger you? Is that what you mean?
Hmm?
That might trigger the other person's anger.
Yeah, or I don't know, maybe if they think they're not sounding angry, but they sound angry to you.
Ah, I see what you mean.
You know, like if,
Yeah, so two people are talking, and one of them says, wow, you're really angry. And the other one says, no, I'm not. Like that? I'm not angry. What are you talking about? Like that?
yeah, I guess it could. But is it possible for people to try and get rid of whatever they're going through by reacting a certain way around certain people?
Everyone that is in our lives at any given time is there because we've called them there to project something about ourselves.
Right. Right, so that was actually, yeah,
So yes.
yeah, right. I already knew that actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then getting back to what you were saying, if one person says, are you angry? No. But you sound angry. Where were you going with that?
I just thought that that's what you meant. Have we all had that experience?
Yeah, or sometimes,
Yeah.
like, yeah, exactly. Have that happen for sure.
Well, I mean, anger can be expressed and experienced in so many different ways, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And because anger is something that we really have negatively reinforced, it's something that we tend to not admit to. Right? It's not something we want to admit to. People get very ashamed of being angry. And and it's something that's used as a real, it's used derogatorily. Whoa, what an angry person. Ooh, he's so angry. Right? I think it's really important that we train ourselves to look past anger. the more the anger someone is manifesting, the more frightened that person is.
The more
Frightened.
brighten.
Frightened.
Afraid.
Plus quelqu'un manifeste la colère, plus cette personne a peur.
Oh, frighten. Okay,
Yeah.
merci.
Une immense colère cache toujours une immense peur. Et ça, c'est vrai pour chacun de nous. So whenever we prefer being angry to being frightened. Huh? We greatly prefer being angry. Right? We know this one, right? When you're blaming somebody, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. So, it's so much more fun to blame somebody else, right? Than to be stuck in fear. Because fear is powerlessness again. And so, this is the natural, if we're looking at wounding, if the wounding in metal element is, I'm alone. The next stage is, I'm afraid. And when we're alone and afraid long enough, it's intolerable. And so we have to get angry. When we get angry, we don't have to. Some people stay in alone and afraid and victim. But actually, victim becomes the anger, right? The having a big V on their t-shirts. I'm a victim and proud of it. So the next stage is to blame, right? Which is actually the victim. and to get angry. And that gives us power. Right? And righteous indignation is one of the best drugs.
Which drugs?
One of the best drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, righteous indignation. Right? It's you've got the moral high road, right? And you know, it's like sex. People really, really get off on righteous indignation. That so-and-so, he did this, and then he did that, and you know what? He did that too. Right? People get so much energy from righteous indignation. Right? It really gives us energy. It's so dangerous.
Can I relate that back to ego for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Because you were mentioning something about ego relating to wood element at the very beginning. That we can learn so much about our own ego.
You can learn about how much of our own value and identity is invested in a certain path and a certain direction by our reaction. Exactly. Right. And so,
In this case, the person who is being very righteous.
well, when we sit with our anger and go to the beliefs, you know, whenever we're blaming somebody for something, the more joy we have in blaming that person, the more probably we own whatever we're blaming that person for. Right?
Mhm.
Or the more hidden, perhaps, is what we're blaming that person for. So, when we get really, really indignant and vociferous, you know, very loud about blaming somebody for something, a good idea is to sit and think about, okay, which one of my parents is involved here? Right? I'm finally getting to yell at my mother or yell at my father, right? I felt impotent when something was happening to me when I was a kid. Finally, I can yell back.
Hmm.
Something along those lines.